Ethan Voss's fingers went cold around the thin red bonus envelope. The crisp paper felt insubstantial, almost weightless, as if the few bills inside might dissolve if he squeezed too hard. The dry, recycled air of the open-plan office washed over him, thick with the hum of overhead heating vents and the faint, stale scent of office coffee, but he felt a chill seep up through the soles of his leather shoes and settle deep in his chest. Marnie Pierce's voice still hummed in his ears, flat and rehearsed, the carefully calibrated tone HR reserved for delivering disappointment with a polite smile. Director Voss, this is your year-end performance bonus. 3,000 yuan, all told roughly $420. The company's overall profitability has been modest this fiscal year. We thank you for your understanding. He lifted his gaze. Across the floor, Zoe Carter from reception was giggling behind her manicured hand, clutching a far thicker envelope. A corner of pale pink banknotes peeked over the sealed edge, bright and unsubtle, like a taunt. Linda Hale from administration clapped her on the shoulder, her voice carrying clearly over the quiet clack of keyboards. 20,000 yuan, $2,800. Mr. Locke specifically asked me to pass this along. He said you've worked so hard greeting clients this year, Zoe. With that poise and that smile, you're the face of Apex Gaming. The office heating was cranked high enough to make the air feel thick and drowsy, but the chill in Ethan's bones only deepened, cold and sharp, coiling tight behind his ribs. Eyes drifted toward him from every cubicle. Surprise, pity, most of all the quick, skittish dart away, people who didn't want to get caught staring at the slow-motion car crash. Madeline Locke stood a few feet away by the copy machine, twirling a sleek silver fountain pen between her long fingers. The founder's niece, freshly back from her global studies program and newly installed as vice president of operations, wore a smirk so unsubtle it might as well have been painted on her perfectly made-up face. $420. $420 for 8 months of 70-hour weeks, of debugging through the night until his vision blurred, of rewriting core server algorithms 3 times over to hit the launch deadline. Ethereal Odyssey, the mobile fantasy blockbuster his small engineering team had built from the ground up, had cracked 100 million yuan in revenue in its first month alone. Full-year revenue topped 400 million yuan, $56 million. He'd written the quarterly data reports. He'd coded the core matchmaking and combat balance algorithms himself, line by line. At the launch victory banquet, Roland Locke had clapped him on the back with a champagne flute in hand, calling him the technical backbone and the soul of Apex Gaming. And now the soul of Apex Gaming's year-end bonus was $420. Zoe seemed to notice the sudden hush rippling outward. Her bright smile faltered, and she tried to tuck the thick envelope behind her back, cheeks flushing. That's far too much, I really... Take it. You've earned every penny. Madeline's voice was lazy, slow, her sharp eyes locked straight on Ethan across the room. The company believes in clear rewards. Those who move the needle get heavy bonuses. Those who put in the time get a little something to keep them motivated. Isn't that right, Director Voss? Ethan stared at Madeline's young, arrogant face. He let his gaze drift, slow and calm, over the colleagues who suddenly found their spreadsheets fascinating, over the framed company values poster on the wall, asterisk integrity, excellence, mutual respect asterisk, and back down to the thin envelope in his hand. It was so light it might as well have been empty. He said nothing. Slowly, deliberately, he folded the envelope in half, then in half again, creasing the paper sharp with his thumbnail, and slipped it into the inner pocket of his charcoal wool blazer, right over his heart. The paper pressed flat against his chest, cold through the fabric. Beneath Madeline's growing, triumphant smirk, beneath the held breath of every person within earshot waiting for him to snap, to argue, to humiliate himself further with pleas or anger. He turned. He walked back toward the engineering department bullpen. His steps were steady, even. No hurry, no drag. Just a man walking back to his desk. Only he knew what else shared that inner blazer pocket. A silver-embossed business card, received in a quiet coffee shop 2 days prior. And a draft email, scheduled for 9 p.m. that night, sitting encrypted in his phone's notes app, ready to send with one tap. Recipient: Roland Locke. Subject: handover of Ethereal Odyssey core architecture and formal resignation. He sat down at his desk and opened his laptop. The cool blue glow of the monitor washed over his face, blank and unreadable to anyone glancing over. He didn't open his work tickets. He didn't pull up the server monitoring dashboard. He just waited. He waited for the phone call he knew was coming. He waited for Roland Locke to call him, just like always, to say the company needed him, to beg him to smooth things over with the one partner who would only negotiate with Ethan Voss, the man holding the 300 million yuan overseas distribution deal. Julian Hayes from Starlight Interactive. His desk phone buzzed once, sharp and loud in the quiet of the engineering floor. The caller ID lit up. R. Locke, Executive Office. He picked up the receiver. His finger hovered over the talk button for half a beat. And at the corner of his mouth, a tiny, almost imperceptible smile tugged. 3 months earlier, deep in autumn, the air had smelled like rain and fallen maple leaves outside the downtown hotel banquet hall. Ethereal Odyssey had just hit its 1-month public launch milestone, and Roland Locke had spared no expense for the celebration. Crystal chandeliers cast warm gold over white tablecloths, waiters circulated with flutes of chilled champagne, and the low hum of laughter and self-congratulation hung thick in the room. Ethan had stood off to the side by the dessert table, holding a glass of sparkling water he'd barely touched. He'd never been one for banquets. He preferred the quiet of his desk, the rhythm of clean code, the satisfaction of solving a problem nobody else could crack. At 32, he was one of the youngest technical directors in the city's gaming scene, pulling in a base salary of 700,000 yuan a year plus project bonuses, enough to live comfortably, to save, to plan a future with Clara. He'd never chased the spotlight. He'd always assumed hard work spoke for itself. Julian Hayes, overseas distribution director at Starlight Interactive, had spotted him across the room and made a beeline, glass raised. The man was in his late 40s, sharp-eyed and straightforward, with a reputation for only working with teams he trusted technically. Voss. He clapped Ethan on the shoulder, his grin genuine. Let me say it again, this product is a powerhouse. The overseas beta numbers are insane. Art direction, combat loop, numerical balance, all top tier. Your team? Best in the business, bar none. Thank you. We put a lot of late nights into it, Ethan said, nodding. He kept it simple. He never knew what to do with praise, especially when it came in front of the boss. Roland Locke glided over a second later, red-faced and beaming, champagne flute in one hand. Julian, you're too kind. It's all teamwork, all company vision. We couldn't have done it without great partners like Starlight. He slid an arm around Ethan's shoulders, warm and paternal, the picture of a grateful CEO. But Ethan here is the engine. Carried half the technical work on his back. Absolute rock star. Ethan had just nodded again. He was used to this. The glory belonged to the team, to the company, to the CEO's brilliant leadership. He was there to build the product. The fame and the money? He'd never fought for it. It had always felt like enough to be respected, to be the person everyone turned to when things broke. He hadn't realized how quickly that respect could be erased for the sake of family. Madeline Locke came home from her overseas entrepreneurship fellowship 2 weeks later. She walked into the office on a Monday morning in tailored designer slacks and a silk blouse, and by lunchtime, the internal announcement went out: Vice President of Operations. Overseeing Ethereal Odyssey live operations and all future global localization efforts. The first clash came the day after the banquet. Roland called Ethan into his corner office, all floor-to-ceiling windows and polished mahogany furniture. Madeline was there already, slouched in the leather guest sofa, scrolling through her phone like she owned the place. Ethan, sit. Roland gestured to the chair across from his desk, his smile warm and avuncular. I wanted to talk you through the next phase for Ethereal Odyssey. Maddie's just getting up to speed on the domestic market, so I'm putting her in charge of the upcoming version iterations and the overseas localization push. You'll support her from the technical side, of course. Your expertise will be invaluable. Ethan's chest went tight. Version iteration and localization weren't just side projects, they were the backbone of long-term revenue, the core of the deepening partnership with Starlight Interactive. Putting Madeline in charge meant handing her the decision-making power, the public credit, and the lion's share of future IP and licensing profits. "Mr. Locke," he said, his voice steady, "the next major patch involves core combat mechanic overhauls and heavy user data analytics integration. Maddie's still learning the product. She'll need time to get up to speed before leading something this high stakes. Overseas localization is also extremely detail-heavy. It has to align perfectly with Starlight's release schedule." "Nonsense. How do you learn if you don't jump in?" Roland laughed, but there was no give in his tone. "You're a rock star, technically. You can mentor her. This company's future is with the next generation. Maddie brings fresh creative ideas, and you bring steady execution. Perfect match." Madeline finally looked up from her phone. She lifted one perfectly arched eyebrow, her smile sharp and patronizing. "Director Voss, I'm looking forward to learning from you. Uncle Roland always says you're a coding genius. I'm especially curious to see how you turn technical excellence into actual paying users. Real revenue, you know." The barb was clear. "You build it, I monetize it. I get the credit, you get to do the work." Ethan heard it loud and clear. He was silent for a long 3 seconds. He thought about the 6 years he'd put in at Apex, about building the engineering department from 3 people to 30, about staying up 3 straight nights to fix a server crash on launch eve. Then he nodded. "Understood. I'll support her however I can." He walked out of the office into the empty hallway. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. He pulled out his phone, opened the voice recorder app, and pressed record. He slipped the phone back into his pocket, still recording, and headed back to engineering. Behind closed office doors, he unlocked an encrypted folder on his work laptop. Inside, neatly organized by date and category, was every critical document from Ethereal Odyssey's entire lifecycle: core algorithm iteration logs, numerical balance frameworks, monetization model designs, user behavior analysis reports, competitive analysis decks, and full meeting minutes from every call with Starlight Interactive. He'd compiled them out of habit, the meticulous care of a lead engineer who hated losing context. Now, staring at the rows of files, he had a quiet, sinking feeling they might turn out to be more than just reference material. His mouse hovered over the final monetization model spreadsheet. He opened it, eyes locking on the full-year projected revenue line. Finance had publicly announced 423 million yuan in annual revenue from the game. He took a screenshot, encrypted it, and saved it to a separate, offline drive. Then he opened his browser and typed 3 queries into the search bar. Game industry core algorithm intellectual property ownership. Legal recourse for wrongfully withheld project bonuses. Non-compete clause enforcement for key technical staff. The legal statutes and case summaries came up cold and clear on the screen. He read through them slowly, line by line, taking notes. When he was done, he picked up his phone and found Owen Reed, his college roommate, now a partner at a prominent local law firm. He typed a short message: "Old friend, got a minute? Need to ask about project bonus disputes and employment contract terms." Owen called him back within 2 minutes. After Ethan laid out the situation in quiet, concise terms, Owen was quiet for a beat. "Ethan, this is not great. If they want to dilute your contribution, push the credit toward the management team, and freeze you out of bonus pools, standard internal complaints won't get you far. Not unless you have a rock-solid paper trail proving your irreplaceability and proof the company intentionally withheld compensation you were promised. Written records. Recordings. Hard numbers on the project's actual profits." Ethan glanced at the screen full of file directories. "I have some records. Are you planning to leave?" Owen asked, blunt as always. Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked out the window at the darkening sky, at the city lights flickering on one by one across the skyline. He thought about Clara, about the life they were building, about what he wanted his career to look like at 35, at 40. "Better to be prepared," he said finally. December brought a sharp shift in the office atmosphere. Madeline settled into her role fast, and she made sure everyone knew it. She called mandatory all-hands meetings twice a week, rambling on about commercial deep dives and user mindset optimization and viral social buzzword after buzzword, none of them rooted in the actual technical reality of the game. She sat in on every engineering sync, front and center, and talked over Ethan every time he raised concerns about server capacity or anti-cheat upgrades. "Director Voss, you're being far too conservative." She cut him off mid-sentence in one cross-departmental review, in front of every engineering lead on the floor. "In this market, speed is everything. You keep talking about server scaling and anti-cheat testing, and by the time you're done running all your little tests, our competitors will have poached every last user." Mr. Locke gave a direct order. The next major patch launches for the Lunar New Year window. Non-negotiable. Ethan's fingers tightened around his pen until his knuckles whitened, but his voice stayed even. "Ms. Locke, it's not conservatism. Ethereal Odyssey's real-time PvP system is extremely sensitive to server latency. If we push untested features live at peak traffic, a single crash could crater the entire player ecosystem. Lunar New Year is our biggest traffic spike of the year. It's also our biggest risk. Risk. Everything has risk." She waved a hand like she was swatting a fly. "Playing it safe doesn't make money. You know what? Fine. You can stay in charge of maintaining the old version. I'll put a separate team on the new feature module. Just lend me 2 of your senior engineers to support them." It was a power play, plain and simple. Not just stealing the new project, gutting his team. Ethan looked at Madeline's unapologetic, entitled face, then scanned the room. Most people stared at their notebooks. A few of his longest-serving engineers looked furious, jaw tight. "Who I assign depends on current workloads and module complexity," he said, not backing down directly but not caving either. He tapped the task dashboard on the screen behind him. "Everyone's at capacity. If you need people fast, I can put together an impact assessment by tomorrow." "Won't be necessary." Madeline pointed straight at 2 seats in the back. "Jesse Zhao, Cole Chin, drop whatever you're working on. Report to the new module team tomorrow morning. Director Voss, I've picked the team. You rearrange the schedules." Jesse and Cole's heads snapped up, eyes wide. They looked straight at Ethan, questioning. Ethan held Madeline's gaze for 2 long, quiet seconds. Then he nodded. "Fine." The meeting dissolved soon after, tense and awkward. Jesse followed Ethan back to his office, barely waiting for the door to click shut before he spoke, voice tight with anger. "Boss, what the hell is this? Madeline doesn't know the first thing about gameplay design. This fast commercial iteration garbage? She's just using us as cheap labor. And when it blows up, we're the ones who take the fall. Keep your voice down." Ethan gestured for him to shut the door all the way. "It's actually a good thing you're going over there." Jesse blinked. "What?" "Go. See what they're actually planning. See how badly they're cutting corners." Ethan's voice was low, only for Jesse's ears. "Keep your eyes open. Every meeting, every important email, every verbal order, especially anything that skips the QA pipeline or pushes features live without stress testing. Document everything. Save everything." Jesse wasn't stupid. The pieces clicked fast. "Boss, you're just being careful." Ethan cut him off. "Remember, you're just following orders. Do the work. Raise the red flags in writing. But the final calls aren't yours. Got it?" Jesse nodded hard. "Got it. One more thing." Ethan leaned in, voice even quieter. "Back up all your work files. Privately. Not on the company cloud." Jesse's eyes went sharp. He nodded again, no more questions. After Jesse left, Ethan opened his personal email. There was an unread message from a well-known headhunting firm, subject line, "CTO opportunity at top-tier game studio." He clicked through. The job description was for a VP of engineering role at Ember Games, one of Apex's direct competitors, makers of the hit Shadow Legion. Compensation open, based on experience. He typed a 2-word reply, interested. A few days later, the insult stopped being subtle and turned personal. The company annual health check results came back, and a few of Ethan's markers were flagged as slightly elevated. He took a half day to go to the hospital for follow-up tests. When he walked back into the office that afternoon, he could feel the atmosphere shift before he even reached his desk. His assistant Tanya stood by his office door, fidgeting, like she didn't know whether to say something. Ethan logged into the internal chat app. One of the non-core engineering group chats was blowing up, and Madeline was in it. He scrolled up to find the source. A single message sent at lunchtime. Some of our more senior employees really need to remember that health is wealth. They look like they work hard, but when it's time to actually fight, they can't keep up. This company needs young, energetic go-getters who can move fast. Not tired old workhorses with a laundry list of health problems. No names. But combined with his half-day doctor's appointment, everyone knew exactly who she was talking about. The chat was dead silent under the message. Nobody had dared reply. Ethan stared at the screen. His fingers felt cold. This wasn't just office politics or sidelining. This was character assassination. She was building a narrative. He was old. He was slow. He was past his prime. She was laying the groundwork to push him out entirely and make it look like a natural retirement. He closed the chat window. He didn't reply. Instead, he opened a new, encrypted document. Date, December 12th. Incident: Madeline Locke made veiled personal attacks in internal work group chat, referencing my health check absence to imply reduced work capacity. Screenshot attached and archived. He saved the document, encrypted it, and filed it away with the recordings, the email screenshots, and the project financial records. Then he picked up his phone and texted Clara, "Dinner tonight? I have something I need to talk through with you." Over dinner at their favorite neighborhood bistro, he laid out the whole situation, calm and factual. He didn't rant. He didn't complain. He just told her what was happening, what he was planning, and what the risks might be. When he finished, Clara reached across the table and covered his hand with hers. Her eyes were warm and steady, no hesitation at all. "Ethan, whatever you decide, I'm with you. If this place doesn't respect you, leave. You're one of the best engineers in this city. You'll never be out of options." Ethan flipped his hand over and squeezed hers. Some of the tightness in his chest loosened. But he knew it wasn't time to leave yet. Not before the year-end bonuses came out. Not before Roland Locke showed his true colors, once and for all. He was waiting for the final insult, the one you could hold in your hand. And he was waiting for his opening, the one man who would only work with him, Julian Hayes, and his 300 million yuan overseas deal was the perfect catalyst. By late December, the office rumor mill was in full swing. Nobody knew exactly where it started, but the whispers were everywhere. Ethan Voss was stuck in his old ways, coasting on the success of Ethereal Odyssey. He was stubborn. He refused to get on board with Madeline's new strategy. Some people even murmured that his health was worse than he let on, that he was burning out. Ethan could feel the stares in the break room, in the elevator. The tide had turned. Most people instinctively drifted toward the new center of power. Only his core engineering team grumbled to him in private, but even they kept their heads down in public. Jesse and Cole, stuck on Madeline's new module team, snuck back to his office every few days to vent about the chaos, requirements changing 3 times a day, deadlines pulled forward. Madeline breathing down their necks to cut QA corners to hit the Lunar New Year deadline. "Boss, this is gonna blow up big," Jesse muttered, leaning in low. She wants to run a live graybox test on actual players just to demo the new features faster. If the servers tank during that. "Did you put your concerns in writing?" "Twice. She called us fearmongers. Said we could just hand out apology gift bags if anything went wrong." Ethan nodded. "Send formal written risk assessments to the project group email. CC Madeline and Mr. Locke. Then do your jobs and save every single version, every chat log, every email." It was his first card on the table. A formal risk warning wouldn't stop Madeline, but when everything eventually came crashing down, it would draw a bright, clear line between who had made the bad calls and who had tried to stop them. By early January, bonus season was in full swing. In years past, this had been a relaxed time of year for Ethan. This year, a heavy hush hung over the engineering floor. Word was Madeline was running the bonus allocation this year, with support from finance and final sign-off from Roland. Ethan had stopped hoping for anything fair. Working with Owen, he'd organized every piece of evidence into a clear timeline and drafted a formal letter demanding full payment of legally owed project bonuses and fulfillment of prior contractual commitments. It sat saved on his encrypted drive, ready to send at any time. On January 15th, the day before bonuses were handed out, Roland called Ethan into his office out of nowhere. Madeline wasn't there this time. "Ethan, sit. Have some tea." Roland poured it himself, warm and grandfatherly, the picture of approachability. "Hard year. Ethereal Odyssey wouldn't exist without you." Ethan took the teacup. He said nothing. "You know how things are out there." Roland sighed, leaning back in his chair, laying on the regret thick. "The market's tough. User acquisition costs have skyrocketed. Even with Ethereal Odyssey's revenue, we're reinvesting heavily in new projects. Expenses everywhere." Ethan listened, quiet. "Maddie's young, she's got drive, but she's still learning. You'll keep mentoring her, right?" Roland shifted gears, smile easy. "I know how much you've contributed. This year's bonus, well, it's going to be a little different. A special gesture, let's say. It might not be what you're used to, but it's heartfelt. When the company bounces back, you'll be first in line. I promise you that. A special gesture. Heartfelt." Ethan lifted his eyes and looked at Roland's face, all warm smiles and practiced regret, every line calculated. $560 million in revenue, and all he got was, "I know your worth." "Mr. Locke," Ethan said, calm and direct, "I'd like to understand the bonus criteria for core Ethereal Odyssey contributors. How, exactly, was my bonus calculated?" Roland's smile faltered for half a second, then bounced right back. "Now, don't be like that. Of course there are criteria. But it's holistic. You've been here a long time. Think long-term. Supporting Maddie now is supporting the company's future. When the company wins, you win. You're a founding member. Your reward will come. Empty promises. Future pie in the sky." Ethan understood perfectly, then and there. There were no criteria. There was no calculation. Just holistic assessment and long-term vision. His work, his revenue, his $56 million, they were done serving their purpose in Roland's plan. Now they needed to be downplayed, forgotten, swept aside to make room for Madeline's grand vision. And he was supposed to take his special gesture, smile, and quietly step back into the role of the quiet, obedient workhorse. "I understand, Mr. Locke," Ethan said. He set down the teacup and stood up. He stood in the hallway outside the office for a long minute. Then he pulled out his phone. He texted the headhunter back, "Can we schedule an in-person meeting this week?" He texted Owen, "If the company slashes my bonus well below contractual norms, and I resign voluntarily, what's the outlook on non-compete compensation and back pay for project bonuses?" Owen texted back fast, "Strong case, if the evidence holds up. They have to pay monthly non-compete compensation or the clause is void. Project bonus recovery depends on contract language and proof. Let's meet in person." Ethan put his phone away and walked back toward engineering. His steps were still steady. But the last flicker of loyalty or goodwill he'd felt for the company he'd helped build, it had gone completely cold. Bonus day, January 16th, dawned gray and overcast. The big conference room had been decked out for the occasion. Long tables draped in red cloth stretched across the room, and the finance team sat behind them with stacks of red envelopes. The air felt festive on the surface, but tight underneath, like everyone was holding their breath. Departments went up one by one to collect. The room was quieter than usual. Engineering went last. The department manager, Old Chin, brought a thick stack of envelopes back and started calling names, passing them out one by one. "Ethan Voss." Ethan stood up and walked over. Old Chin wouldn't meet his eye. He handed over a single thin envelope, voice low and hurried. "Ethan, yours was set aside separately." Ethan took it. It weighed almost nothing in his palm. He didn't go back to his seat right away. Beside him, the administration team was still handing theirs out. Linda Hale's clear, bright voice cut through the hum. Zoe Carter. Your bonus, 20,000 yuan. Mr. Locke specifically wanted you to know how much he appreciates you being the face of the company all year. Every head in the room turned. Zoe stood there flustered, face bright red, clutching the thick, bulging envelope. 20,000 yuan. For a receptionist. Ethan looked down at the thin envelope in his own hand. Slowly, deliberately, he tore open the seal. A small stack of red bills slid out. He counted them, slow and calm, right there in front of everyone. 30 bills. 3,000 yuan. The room went dead silent. Every eye in the room snapped to him, to the thin stack of bills in his fingers. Surprise. Pity. And a few sharp, gloating stares from Madeline and her little circle. Madeline stood a few feet away, her smirk impossible to hide now. She even raised her voice, just enough for everyone to hear. See? The company believes in clear rewards. Those who deserve it get bonuses. Those who just need encouragement get a little care package. Director Voss, 3,000 yuan, straight from Mr. Locke's heart. Aren't you going to thank the company? Humiliation. Raw, deliberate, contrasted humiliation. 56 million in revenue. A $420 care package. A receptionist getting 7 times as much for being the face of the company. Ethan felt blood rush to his ears, then cool just as fast. His fingertips were cold, but his hand holding the bills didn't shake. He lifted his head. His gaze swept calmly over Madeline, over all the watching faces, and then back down to the 30 bills in his hand. No anger. No argument. No flicker of shame. He just straightened the bills out neatly, folded them in half, and then, with everyone holding their breath, tucked the thin stack into the inner pocket of his blazer. The movement was slow, deliberate, almost ritualistic. Then he looked right at Madeline. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly through the silent room. You're right, Ms. Locke. The company's gesture. I've received it. Without another word, he turned and walked back toward his desk. His steps were steady. His back was straight. But that heavy, quiet, storm-brewing silence? It felt louder than any shout. Madeline's triumphant smirk faltered. She'd expected yelling, expected embarrassment, expected him to break. This quiet acceptance left her feeling like she'd punched a pillow. Ethan sat down at his desk and opened his laptop. The 3,000 yuan pressed against his chest through his blazer, cold as a block of ice. He waited. Sure enough, less than 20 minutes later, his desk phone rang. It was Roland's secretary. Director Voss? Mr. Locke would like to see you in his office right away. Ethan hung up. He didn't move immediately. First, he double-checked that his phone's voice recorder was on and tucked it into his inner pocket. Then he pulled a small silver USB drive out of his desk drawer, plugged it into his computer, and copied over a handful of key files in seconds. He stood up and walked to the executive wing. Before he pushed open the office door, he tapped the record button one more time. Roland sat behind his desk, his smile thinner than it had been the day before. Madeline was there too, slouched on the sofa, nose in the air. She huffed when Ethan walked in. Ethan, sit. Roland gestured to the chair. Ethan sat. His back was straight. His face was calm. About earlier, Roland rubbed his hands together, awkward. Maddie's young. She speaks her mind. Don't take it personally. The bonus situation. The company has its challenges. But I absolutely recognize your contribution. Tell you what, after the new year, I'll adjust your base salary. Throw in a little extra on the side. Make it right. More empty promises. After the new year. Mr. Locke, I assume you didn't call me here just to talk about bonuses, Ethan said, flat. Roland was caught off guard for half a second, then his face lit back up with forced enthusiasm. Right? Important news. Julian just called. The overseas numbers are blowing past projections. The Starlight Interactive Board has preliminarily approved an additional 300 million yuan in distribution budget. 300 million yuan. Ethan's eyelid twitched, just once. But Roland said, his tone softening, edging into pleading, Julian was very specific. He wants you as the lead technical director for the overseas localization. All technical plans, all data integration, he will only talk to you. He's flying in tomorrow afternoon. He specifically asked to meet with you to finalize the framework. There it was. Ethan's mind was clear, cold, perfectly focused. Value only gets reassigned when someone else is desperate for it. $56 million in revenue was only worth $420 in heartfelt bonus, but a $420 million future order was enough for the boss to personally grovel to the old workhorse. He'd just humiliated in front of the whole company. Madeline shot to her feet. Uncle, why does it have to be him? The project belongs to the company. Quiet. Roland snapped at her, then turned back to Ethan with a strained smile. Ethan, you see? Julian only trusts you. This contract is make or break for us. You're one of the originals. We need you on this. You get this signed, and you're the hero of the overseas project. I'll personally sign off on your bonus. Whatever you want. Ethan listened. He weighed his options. Blow up now? Too early. Refusing outright would just make Roland panic and scramble for leverage. He needed to wait for the call. Wait for Roland to think everything was going his way. Wait for him to hand Ethan the responsibility of connecting with Julian. And then, right when Roland was feeling most victorious, right when he thought that $300 million deal was in the bag, he would give him his answer. When does Julian land? Ethan asked. His tone gave nothing away. Roland's eyes lit up. 3 p.m. tomorrow. I've got a car picking him up. 6 o'clock dinner at the Kempinski Hotel. Private dining room, just us, the key stakeholders. Ethan nodded. Understood. I'll be there. That's what I'm talking about. Roland sighed in relief. Tomorrow night's all you. Ethan stood up and left. Out in the empty hallway, he stopped. He pulled the silver-embossed business card out of his inner pocket. The logo read, Ember Games. Title, Vice President of Engineering. Name, Ethan Voss. On the back, in neat handwriting, anytime you're ready. Caleb S. Caleb Sterling, founder and CEO of Ember Games, creator of Shadow Legion, Apex's biggest rival. The headhunter had made the introduction, and they'd clicked immediately. Same values, same vision for what a game studio could be. Ethan tucked the card carefully back into his pocket. Then he pulled out his phone. He canceled the scheduled resignation email to Roland. He wrote a new one. Recipients, Roland Locke, Madeline Locke, all executive leadership, HR director. Scheduled send time, tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. sharp. Subject, resignation, Ethan Voss. Body, one line, I, Ethan Voss, hereby resign from my position as technical director of Apex Gaming, effective immediately. Thank you for the years of partnership. I wish you well. He walked back to engineering and started quietly packing up his personal things. A water bottle, a few technical books, a framed photo of him and Clara at the coast. Not much. It didn't even fill one cardboard box. A few coworkers glanced over, faces complicated. He paid them no mind. When he was done, he picked up the box and walked toward the elevators. Right as the elevator doors slid shut, he glanced back one last time at the glass doors of the engineering department. There was no nostalgia in his eyes. Just cold, unshakable resolve. The elevator descended. His phone buzzed. A text from Caleb Sterling. Everything's set on our end. Kempinski tomorrow night. Looking forward to it. I ran into Julian earlier today at the conference center. He's very excited to explore new collaborations. Ethan texted back, see you tomorrow. The next evening, the Kempinski Hotel's private dining room glowed with warm amber light. Roland sat at the head of the table in a brand new tailored suit, hair combed perfectly, practically buzzing with suppressed excitement. A $300 million deal would take Apex to the next level, put them on the map for an IPO. Most importantly, it would cement Madeline's status. Her uncle had landed the deal, so of course she'd inherit the legacy. Madeline sat at his right, trying to look poised and professional, but her smug grin kept slipping through. The finance director and marketing director sat beside her, laughing at all her jokes and laying on the flattery thick. Julian only trusts Director Voss's technical vision. Madeline's going to learn so much from this. She's going to be running the whole show in no time. Roland waved it off with a smile, but his eyes kept darting to the door. Ethan wasn't there yet. Where is he? Madeline checked her watch, annoyed. His ego's getting out of control. Relax. Roland shot her a sharp look. He picked up his phone like he was going to call, then thought better of it and set it back down. Just then, the heavy dining room door swung open. Ethan walked in. He was wearing the same dark charcoal suit he'd had on the day before, but it looked freshly pressed, sharp and clean. He only had his phone in his hand. His face was calm, his eyes deep and unreadable. Ethan, there you are. Sit here, right beside me. Roland's smile was bright and relieved. He pointed to the empty seat on his left. We were just waiting for you. Julian's plane just landed. He's on his way over, should be here any minute. Ethan sat down as directed. Ethan, about yesterday, Roland poured him a cup of tea, leaning in low, conspiratorial. You close this deal with Julian tomorrow, and I'll have finance cut you a special bonus check. 800,000 yuan. $112,000. Straight to your account. 800,000 yuan. For a 300 million deal. Still laughably cheap. Still just another empty promise, to be renegotiated later. Ethan picked up the teacup and took a small sip. He said nothing. Madeline rolled her eyes across the table, but kept her mouth shut. Time ticked by. At 6:10, the door opened again. Julian Hayes walked in, sharp suit, calm, confident demeanor, followed by his assistant and business affairs lead. Julian. Welcome, welcome. Roland practically jumped up to greet him, hand outstretched. Roland. Good to see you. Julian's smile was polite, professional. His eyes scanned the room, and when they landed on Ethan, they lit up. He walked straight over, hand out. Ethan. Good to see you again. The overseas numbers are fantastic. Retention's way above projections. Ethan stood and shook his hand. Glad to hear it. The team put in the work. Teamwork, sure. Julian clapped him on the shoulder. But let's be honest, this 300 million budget increase? It only happens if you're leading the technical side. Nobody else I trust this much with a product this big. It was blunt, and it made Roland's smile wider than ever. Madeline's joy tightened. You can count on it, Julian. Ethan's our technical core. He'll run point on the whole overseas project, Roland promised quickly. Everyone took their seats. Food and wine started flowing. Roland led the toasts. A few rounds in, it was clear Julian was far more interested in talking shop with Ethan than making small talk with the rest of them. Ethan, on the localization architecture, especially the Southeast Asia network optimization and payment integration. What's your read? Julian asked, leaning in, all business. Ethan set down his chopsticks. He laid out 3 key priorities, clear and concise, all based on deep data analysis and forward-looking design. Julian nodded along, impressed. A few more courses, a few more toasts, and the conversation turned to the actual contract terms. Julian set down his wine glass, serious now. Roland, Ethan, the budget increase is locked in. As long as Ethan's team leads the technical execution, and we can guarantee the overseas build quality, we're ready to move forward at market-competitive rates. Roland's hands were shaking with excitement. Julian, that's fantastic. We will deliver, I promise you. Though, Julian added, turning to Ethan, I have one small request. To make sure the technical roadmap stays consistent, I'd like Ethan and a small core team to co-locate with our overseas division for the initial research and design phase. Start as early as next week. Co-location. Joint design. That was the highest level of trust, a deep long-term partnership. Roland could barely contain himself. Absolutely. No problem at all. Ethan, clear your calendar. Drop everything else. Full focus on Julian's project. Every eye in the room turned to Ethan. Madeline stared too, eyes sharp with jealousy, but also with the quiet satisfaction of knowing she'd get to take credit for all his work later. Ethan slowly picked up his napkin and dabbed at the corner of his mouth. Then he lifted his head. His gaze swept calmly over Roland's ecstatic face, over Madeline's petty, triumphant little smirk, and finally settled on Julian's attentive, expectant expression. He didn't answer Roland. Instead, he pulled his phone out of his inner blazer pocket. He unlocked it, opened his contacts, found a name, and hit call. He put it on speakerphone. Ring. Ring. The dial tone echoed loud and clear in the suddenly silent dining room. Roland froze. Madeline frowned. Julian looked mildly confused. The call connected. A deep, warm, amused male voice came through the speaker. Ethan? I figured you'd be calling about now. How's Roland's welcome dinner holding up? Good wine. The voice was familiar. Roland's brain screeched to a halt. Caleb Sterling. Ember Games. Their biggest competitor. Ethan spoke into the phone, his voice clear and steady. Caleb, I'm in the Kempinski private dining room. Julian's here with us. Caleb laughed on the other end. Perfect. Julian, Roland, sorry to crash the party. Allow me to formally introduce myself. Caleb Sterling, CEO of Ember Games. And allow me to formally welcome Ethan Voss to our team as Vice President of Engineering, effective immediately. Dead silence in the room. The blood drained from Roland's face so fast he looked gray. He stared at Ethan, eyes bulging, mouth working, but no sound coming out. Madeline's chopsticks clattered onto her bone china plate with a sharp crack. She sat there with her mouth hanging open, stunned stupid. The finance director, the marketing director, all of them froze like statues. Julian blinked, surprised, then a flicker of understanding crossed his face. Maybe even approval. He looked at Ethan and gave a small, subtle nod. Ethan held Roland's furious, disbelieving gaze and kept talking, calm as ever. Also, Caleb, regarding Starlight's overseas budget increase, based on my prior deep work with Julian and my complete knowledge of Ethereal Odyssey's technical architecture, I believe Ember Games can present a more competitive, more technically consistent proposal. Julian's right here. You two can discuss next steps directly. Excellent. Caleb's voice was warm with amusement. Julian, would you and your team have time for an initial briefing tomorrow morning at your hotel? Julian glanced at Roland, who looked like he was about to have a stroke, then back at Ethan, calm and composed. He paused for 2 beats, then spoke directly into Ethan's phone. Caleb, good to finally connect. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Conference room at the hotel. We'll be there. Boom. The words hit like a thunderclap, shattering every last one of Roland's delusions. His $300 million deal. His biggest client. The man he'd flown in to wine and dine was sitting right there at his dinner table, agreeing to meet with his worst enemy. And the man who'd handed him that enemy on a silver platter was the same man he'd promised a special bonus to 10 minutes earlier. Ethan, how dare you? Roland shot to his feet, fingers shaking with rage as he pointed. This is betrayal. Corporate espionage. I'll sue you for trade secret theft. I'll enforce the non-compete. You'll never work in this industry again. Ethan slowly stood up. He was half a head taller than Roland. He looked down at his former boss, at the man who'd aged 10 years in 30 seconds, and there was no anger in his eyes, no gloating. Just cold, impassive distance. He pulled the thin red bonus envelope out of his other inner pocket. He set it down gently on the Lazy Susan in the middle of the table, right in front of Roland. The red paper blazed against the white tablecloth. Mr. Locke, that's my year-end bonus. 3,000 yuan. Your heartfelt gesture from yesterday. As for trade secrets. He paused. His gaze flicked over to Madeline, who'd gone completely pale in her chair. All core Ethereal Odyssey materials are on the company servers. I completed all required handover before I resigned. As for the new version you were so excited about. A tiny, cold, sharp smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Maybe you should ask your niece exactly what fast commercial iteration methods she used to hit that Lunar New Year deadline. How many QA processes she skipped. How many paper trails she left behind for a security audit. Madeline shuddered. The last of the color drained from her face. Ethan didn't look at them again. He turned to Julian and gave a small, respectful nod. Julian, sorry for the spectacle. My new team will walk you through the full technical details moving forward. I'm confident Ember Games will deliver far better results for you. Julian stood and shook his hand, firm and serious. Ethan, I respect your choice. I work with people, not logos. Your skill and your integrity are what matter. I'm looking forward to working with you in your new role. With that, Julian didn't even glance at Roland. He nodded to his assistant and his business lead and walked out of the dining room. They were gone. The room was left with Roland and Madeline, their stone-faced executives, and Ethan, standing by the table like a statue carved from ice. Roland stared at the red envelope on the Lazy Susan, then back up at Ethan, his eyes wild with hatred, regret, and the slow, dawning horror that he'd lost everything. Ethan, you're ruthless. Ethan picked up his phone. Caleb had already hung up. He straightened his suit jacket. Then he looked at Roland and spoke his final words. You taught me one thing, Mr. Locke. Clear rewards and clear consequences. That 3,000 yuan gesture? I'm giving it back. As for the 400 million in revenue. He paused. His gaze was sharp as a blade. Consider it my farewell gift to you and your company. He turned, pulled open the heavy dining room door, and stepped out. The hallway outside was warm and well-lit. The room behind him was silent as a grave. He walked away and left all the ruin and the old world locked behind him. Ethan's hand had just touched the elevator button when the heavy dining room door slammed open behind him. Roland came stumbling out, face ashen. I ask you. Ethan. Wait. You can't do this. Get Julian back here. No. Ethan slowly turned around. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. He didn't step inside. He just stood there, calm, watching Roland stagger to a halt a few feet away. Mr. Locke. Something else. You signed a non-compete. I'm going to sue you into the ground. Non-compete. Ethan tilted his head slightly. Under labor law, employers are required to pay monthly compensation for the duration of a non-compete period. No less than 30% of the employee's average monthly salary over the prior 12 months. His voice was steady, matter of fact. So tell me, Mr. Locke, how much are you planning to pay me every month? 30% of my 700,000 yuan base salary is roughly 210,000 yuan a month. $29,400. Is that in the budget? Roland choked. 210,000 yuan a month. For 2 years? Impossible. You resigned. You've betrayed the company. You don't get a cent. I submitted my resignation. It's a standard unilateral termination by the employee. Under judicial precedent, if an employer fails to pay non-compete compensation for 3 consecutive months, the employee can petition to have the entire agreement voided. He took one small step forward. His voice dropped, lower and clearer. So here's your choice, Mr. Locke. Either you deposit $29,400 into my account every month for the next 2 years, or your non-compete agreement is worthless. Your call. And as for suing me for trade secret theft, Ethan slowly pulled a small silver USB drive out of his inner pocket and twirled it between his fingers. Guess what's on here? All the Ethereal Odyssey source code? All the technical plans. He shook his head. No, those are all at the office. I didn't take a single line. This has the last 3 months of Madeline's fast iteration project. Every email ordering the team to skip stress testing. Every meeting recording where she demanded live user testing without safety protocols. Every formal risk assessment Jesse and Cole submitted, copied to both you and Madeline, warning about server crashes and data leaks. Oh, and one more thing. Ethan paused. A side-by-side analysis of some of the finance team's more creative cost amortization methods on the Ethereal Odyssey project. How they don't quite line up with the original contracts and the public operating reports. Interesting reading. Now, imagine if I handed this USB drive to Julian's security audit team. Or the relevant regulatory bodies. Ethan didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Roland understood perfectly. It wasn't trade secrets. It was a ticking time bomb. Proof that could destroy the company's reputation, tank every future project, even trigger formal investigations. Ethan watched Roland's shoulders slump, watched the hope drain out of him, watched Madeline creep out of the dining room behind him, white as a sheet and trembling. He slipped the USB drive back into his pocket. Then he added, quiet and final, "I'm not going to send any of this to anyone. Not right now. Whether it ends up where it shouldn't, that depends entirely on how you and your niece conduct yourselves from here on out." He turned and stepped into the elevator. The doors slid shut slowly. They closed on Roland and Madeline and on the crumbling world they'd built. The elevator descended smoothly. Ethan pulled out his phone and canceled the scheduled resignation email. There was no point now. What he'd just said had more weight than any formal letter. He texted Caleb, left the dinner. "Julian's confirmed for 9 a.m. tomorrow." Caleb texted back instantly, "Got it. Welcome aboard. Legal teams on standby for any fallout." Ethan walked out of the hotel lobby into the cool evening air. A black sedan was waiting at the curb. The window rolled down, and Caleb Sterling's calm, smiling face looked out at him. "Get in, VP. Straight to the office?" Caleb asked as Ethan climbed in. "Yeah, there are a few things we need to lock down tonight." Caleb handed him a stainless steel thermos. "Hot tea. That was quite a show back there. But it's not over. Roland won't roll over that easy. I know the guy. He's vindictive." "I know." Ethan twisted off the cap and took a sip. "That's why he chased me down. The USB will hold him for a while, but not forever. Once he realizes Julian's gone for good and the company's on the brink, he'll get desperate." "What's the play?" "Go on the offensive." Ethan's eyes were cold and focused. "Tomorrow morning, I'll have Jesse and Cole compile all their records of Madeline's violations, risk reports, warning emails, recordings of forced unsafe orders. Full package. Send it anonymously to every board member and major investor. Hit him from the inside. Make him fight a war on two fronts. Roland's the majority shareholder, but he doesn't have absolute control. When times were good, nobody asked questions. Now he's lost his biggest client, his biggest future deal, and his technical lead just defected to the competition. On top of that, his niece's pet project is a ticking time bomb of compliance failures. The board and investors won't sit still for it. He'll be too busy fighting for his job to come after us. And it'll show Julian exactly how much of a mess the old company really is." "Brilliant." Caleb nodded, impressed. "Roland won't have time to bother you. Even if he wanted to sue, he'll be too busy putting out internal fires. And with the evidence in our pocket, he won't dare." The car pulled into a tech park and stopped in front of a brightly lit office building. The Ember Games logo glowed blue and silver against the dark sky. "Welcome home, Ethan." Inside, the office was still buzzing with people working late. Caleb clapped his hands to get everyone's attention. "Team, I'd like you all to formally meet our new Vice President of Engineering, Ethan Voss." Applause broke out. No fake corporate politeness, just genuine excitement from engineers who knew his work. Ethan could feel it immediately. The vibe here was nothing like the stale, political mess he'd left at Apex. "Your office is upstairs. The core team's waiting in the conference room. A couple of them you already know." Ethan pushed open the conference room door. 7 or 8 people were inside, and Jesse and Cole were right there at the table. They jumped up when they saw him, grinning. "Boss." Ethan walked over and clapped them both on the shoulder. "Good work. Glad you're both here. Wouldn't miss it." Jesse's voice was tight with excitement. "Staying there would have been torture. Where you go, we go." Cole nodded fast. "We compiled all the materials like you said. Ready to go whenever." Ethan looked over at Caleb. Caleb smiled. "I recruited them. They'd have been miserable stuck there with Madeline breathing down their necks. Better to bring the whole core team over. Compensation and onboarding all taken care of." Ethan felt a weight lift off his shoulders. With this team, people he trusted, people who knew the product inside and out, they'd deliver for Julian. "All right. Time's tight. Let's get started." Ethan sat down at the head of the table. "Jesse, Cole, walk us through the full materials package. Highlight anything that would directly violate Starlight's security partnership agreement. We'll clean up the anonymous version, make sure facts are rock solid, No personal attacks. Got it. Everyone else, Ethan said, turning to the senior Ember engineers. Here's the Overseas Ethereal Odyssey data report and Starlight's initial budget increase requirements. Get up to speed. Tomorrow's briefing has 3 pillars. 1. Seamless upgrade path from the current architecture. 2. How we eliminate all the risks Madeline's team introduced. 3. Ember's own proprietary overseas tech stack. The meeting ran until 2 in the morning. Caleb dropped off food and coffee halfway through and smiled when he saw the room buzzing with focused energy. By 2 a.m., the presentation framework was locked in and the anonymous board package was finalized with legal review. Boss, send it at 10 a.m. tomorrow? Jesse asked. Ethan thought for a second and shook his head. 3 p.m. Why? Because at 10 a.m., we'll be in the middle of our briefing with Julian. Ethan's eyes were dark with focus. I want Roland to lose his biggest client and have his board explode on the same day. 3 p.m. Julian will have already given us the verbal go-ahead. The board and investors will get the package right when he's at his lowest. That's when the real fallout starts. The next morning at 8:50, Ethan and his team walked into the conference room at Julian's hotel. Julian and his technical advisors were already there. He stood when Ethan walked in and shook his hand. Ethan. Punctual as always. Caleb, I presume. The presentation started. Ethan didn't rely on flashy slides. He walked straight to the whiteboard and started drawing architecture diagrams, explaining every point clearly, thoroughly, technically. He laid out not just the strengths of Ember's proposal, but the unvarnished risks of the current Apex build, exactly the risks Madeline had introduced, framed professionally, objectively, backed by data. The same risks from the anonymous package, but presented as expert technical analysis. The briefing lasted 2 hours. When it was over, Julian sat back for a moment, thoughtful. Ethan, Caleb, technically, this is solid. Better than solid. You didn't just give us a solution. You flagged problems we didn't even know we had. In principle, Starlight Interactive is ready to enter exclusive in-depth negotiations with Ember Games for the full overseas budget increase. They'd done it. Back in the car, Caleb clapped Ethan on the shoulder. $300 million deal, basically in our pocket. Best first day any VP has ever had, hands down. Ethan stared out the window at the passing city. Roland won't take this lying down. Legal just got word. Roland called an emergency executive meeting first thing this morning. Swearing up and down he's gonna sue us for unfair competition. Let him sue. Ethan's voice was flat. He has no case. He can't enforce the non-compete without paying for it. He can't prove trade secret theft because we didn't take any. And Julian's choosing us based on technical merit. That's just business. Speaking of which, Ethan checked his phone. 2:55 p.m. His surprise should be arriving right about now. As if on cue, his phone buzzed. A text from Jesse, sent. Back at Ember Games, in Ethan's bright new corner office, Caleb knocked on the door a little while later and handed him a tablet. Take a look. The show's starting. On the screen, a popular local gaming forum had a viral post blowing up. Exclusive. Major mobile studio hit with massive management scandal. Boss's niece pushed unsafe live features, risking total server collapse. The post didn't name names, but the clues were obvious. L Studio, the boss's niece, that one popular fantasy Odyssey game. It laid out in detail how the niece in charge of the new patch had skipped QA, cut testing corners, and run live tests on users to hit a holiday deadline, risking crashes and data leaks. It included redacted email screenshots and meeting notes. Half an hour after going up, it was the top post on the forum. One of ours. Nope. Caleb shook his head. Too clean, too well-sourced. My money's on someone inside Apex who's hated Madeline for months. Our anonymous package probably just lit the fuse. Warm-up act. Ethan handed the tablet back. The board and investors are where the real fire is. Right on cue, Caleb's phone rang. He answered, listened for a minute, and raised an eyebrow at Ethan. Word from our inside contact. Roland's board turned their regular afternoon meeting into an emergency closed session. All the outside directors and investor reps showed up. Tense as hell. Roland threw a coffee mug. Madeline got called in, and 10 minutes later, she walked out looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Investors care about two things: profit and risk. They just lost their biggest revenue driver, and now there's a scandal that could lead to massive fines and reputational damage. They need someone to blame. They need to know their investment is safe. Roland's seat is gonna get very hot, very fast. Just then, Ethan's desk phone rang. Front desk transferring an outside call. Director Voss. Mr. Voss? This is Marnie Pierce from Apex HR. The voice on the line was tight, nervous. Mr. Locke would like to speak with you again. About compensation. He's willing to make it right, whatever it takes. If you just put in a good word with Julian, name your price. Ethan hit the record button and nodded at Caleb. Marnie, he said, his voice going cold, tell Mr. Locke 3 things. 1. I'm not coming back. 2. Julian makes his own business decisions based on technical merit. I don't control him. 3. As for my bonus? I already gave it back to him. If he still has questions about clear rewards and consequences, he can ask his board what they're discussing right now. Or check the gaming forums. He hung up. Caleb shook his head. Should have seen this coming. By late afternoon, Jesse burst into the office, practically buzzing. Boss, you'll never guess. Madeline just posted a rant on her social media. Vague as hell, but calling you a backstabber, saying you stole company secrets, threatening legal action. Total meltdown. Ethan glanced at the post Jesse held out. Let her rant. The more she makes a scene, the worse she looks. The board and the investors don't want entitled royalty throwing tantrums when the company's burning down. Sure enough, barely an hour later, Cole ran in with an update, grinning. Breaking. Madeline's been suspended from all duties, pending internal investigation. Her fast iteration project's been frozen, all data locked for third-party security audit. The board set up a special committee to review all major projects and finances from the last year. Roland's had some of his chairman authority temporarily handed to an outside director. The house of cards was collapsing. What about Roland? Locked himself in his office after the meeting. People heard him throwing things. The finance director got called in for questioning and came out looking like a ghost. Ethan's face stayed calm. He'd expected all of this. He looked at Caleb. Do we have any active ongoing partnerships with Apex? One small SDK licensing deal. Low 6 figures. And we provide some back-end data analytics tool support for their internal teams. Terminate what we can. Pay the break fees if we have to. Let the support contracts lapse. Don't renew. Caleb nodded. He got it, cut all ties, let the chaos accelerate. Also, Ethan added, leak the news that we've entered exclusive negotiations with Starlight for the overseas budget increase. Just the facts. No drama. Let the market do the rest. The news would be salt in the wound for Apex. And it would tell every other studio in the industry exactly where the talent and the momentum were. 2 months later, early summer sunlight slanted through the blinds of the CEO office at Nova Interactive, striping the floor in gold and shadow. Ethan sat behind the desk, signing the final page of a stack of legal documents. On the wall behind him, the new Nova Interactive logo glowed, and underneath it, the company's core values: technical excellence, respect, fairness. There was a knock on the door. Jesse stuck his head in, grinning from ear to ear. Ethan, bank just confirmed. First installment from Starlight's overseas budget hit the account. A full 100 million yuan, $14 million. Ethan set down his pen and smiled. Great. Tell the team to stay on schedule. Quality doesn't slip. Also, Jesse lowered his voice, the Roland case, investigations wrapping up. The evidence is solid. The numbers are big. They'll be moving to prosecution soon. Madeline's also been charged over the unsafe live user testing that caused that data leak, computer systems damage, unauthorized data exposure. Whole thing's a mess. Ethan nodded. He didn't feel triumph, didn't feel vindication. Just quiet closure. The legal system would handle it. Severance packages for all the departing employees went out? All done. N+1 exactly as promised. The ones who stayed are all on the new pay scale. Morale's through the roof. The old engineering crew says they haven't felt this valued in years. Nova Interactive formed from the core assets of the old Apex Gaming, restructured and rebuilt. Roland and his family's shares had been forced out. Roland was facing criminal charges. Madeline's future was uncertain. Their loyalists had scattered. The board had been completely reconstituted. Ethan was the second-largest individual shareholder, with a combination of technical equity and cash investment, and he served as both CEO and CTO. Ember Games had come in as a strategic investor, and the two studios had signed a deep cross-platform partnership. The $400 million in revenue he'd built at Apex had come back to him, in a way, not as a bonus, but as real ownership, real control of a company built on his values. That humiliating 3,000 yuan bonus was long gone, filed away as evidence in the regulatory case, a footnote in the story. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, Ethan sat down for a media interview. The reporter was young, sharp, direct. "Mr. Voss, you built a product that generated $500 million yuan in revenue, then received a year-end bonus smaller than your company's receptionist. You left for a competitor at the exact moment your old employer needed you most, and now you're back as CEO of the restructured company. How do you reflect on that journey?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. It reinforced something I've always believed. A technical professional's worth is never defined by someone else's gesture. It's defined by the market, by what you build, by the value you create. Dignity isn't something you get by staying quiet and hoping someone will reward you. When you have irreplaceable skill and you're willing to stand up for yourself within the rules, dignity finds you. Some people say your move to a competitor and the fallout that followed was ruthless. That it lacked loyalty. Ethan smiled, a small, steady smile. I chose to stand up for myself within legal and ethical boundaries and to hold people accountable for breaking the rules. Loyalty in business has to go both ways. It has to be built on mutual respect and keeping your word. When one side throws that respect away, when they use loyalty as an excuse to underpay and exploit people, walking away isn't betrayal. I left because that place no longer valued people. I came back because this place deserves to be rebuilt the right way. The interview wrapped up soon after. Ethan walked back to his office as the sun was setting, painting the room in warm gold. On his desk sat the framed photo of him and Clara, taken outside the Ember Games office a few months prior, both of them laughing. Their wedding was set for autumn. The down payment on their new house had come from his signing bonus and equity at Nova. His phone rang. It was Caleb. "Free tonight? Julian's throwing a small dinner to celebrate the project kickoff. Specifically asked for you. Wouldn't miss it." He hung up and glanced one last time at his computer screen, Nova Interactive's latest financial summary. One line jumped out: projected annual net profit, 680 million yuan. He closed his laptop and stood up. He paused at the office door for half a second, glancing back at the room that represented so much responsibility, so much possibility. Then he pulled open the door and walked out. The hallway was bright and busy. Employees looked up and nodded as he passed. "Evening, Ethan." He nodded back. His steps were steady. As he walked through the open-plan office, he passed a cluster of young engineers arguing excitedly about a new feature, faces bright with focus. They looked just like he had, 10 years earlier, fresh out of college, ready to build something great. He smiled a little and kept walking. The elevator took him down to the parking garage. He got into his car but didn't start it right away. He pulled a new business card out of his wallet. Nova Interactive, CEO and CTO, Ethan Voss. It was thick, high-quality cardstock, the gold lettering glinting softly in the dim overhead light. He looked at it for a few seconds, then slipped it back into his card holder, right next to the old Ember Games VP of Engineering card. Once rivals. Now partners. Once the end of a humiliating chapter. Now the start of something far bigger. He pulled out of the garage and merged into the evening traffic. The city's neon lights flickered on one by one, painting the road ahead in color. In the rearview mirror, the Nova Interactive building grew smaller, but its bright new logo still glowed clear against the darkening sky. Ethan looked straight ahead, his eyes calm and steady. The story of the $500 million product and the $3,000 bonus would become industry lore, a cautionary tale about respect and value. But for him, the road was just beginning.